Israel tonight, where a country at war for nearly 2 years is reportedly thinking of conducting preventative strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. The strikes could come reportedly as early as this weekend, which would not go over well with the Trump administration. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu probably thought Trump term 2 would give him carte blanche to strike Iran's nuclear facilities if he needed to. Probably thought Trump would sign up to go along with it. Now, 131 days into that second term, Trump has flipped the script on his approach to Israel.
Biden is trying to hold him back. He probably should be doing the opposite, actually. I'm glad that Bibi decided to do what he had to do.
Back on Iran, did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did.
I will support Israel's right to win its war on terror. You have to support that.
We have a chance of making a deal with Iran also. They don't want to be blown up.
Netanyahu is learning the hard way what his hero, Lord Palmerston, back from the British times in the 1800s, said. We have no eternal allies. We have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual. With us now, Ambassador John Bolton, former assistant to the president for national security affairs, national security advisor, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador, good to see you. Should Israel unilaterally bomb Iran before there's a deal?
Well, I think they've got to pick the timing. I'm frankly surprised, as you were indicating, that it hasn't happened already. I think when Prime Minister Netanyahu came for his second visit with President Trump after the inauguration, that they would work out the details. And I think he was as surprised as anyone to learn that instead Trump was about to launch Steve Witkoff on yet another negotiating effort, this time with the Ayatollahs in Iran, which has been going on since then. Now, Trump originally said in a letter to the Ayatollah Khamenei he would consider 2 months of negotiation to see real proof from Iran that they wanted to give up nuclear weapons. I think we're at that 2 months. So I think we're really at a very important point here, whether Trump is going to try and continue these negotiations, which I think are going to be completely fruitless, or whether Israel is going to do what it has to do to protect its very existence.
You know, Ambassador, we could have had this conversation on a different network that both you and I worked for going back to 2010. I remember staying in Jerusalem through the summer of 2012, leading up to the election, Obama-Romney, because after that, the window for Israel to strike Iran was going to close. That's 13 years ago. Why is right now any different?
Well, because at that period in time, Iran was still trying to hide its efforts and doing a pretty good job of it. And they were going slowly to get a nuclear weapons capability to avoid Israel taking action. Plus, they had the Obama administration trying to negotiate with them. This is the perfect place for the would-be nuclear proliferator. Time is on their side. The more negotiations they conduct, the more leisurely their pursuit can be. And that has continued. Right now, I think there's little doubt that, particularly given their relationship with North Korea, that the Iranians are very close to having a nuclear device. And, you know, there's no certainty in what their capabilities are, but the level of risk that they'll cross the threshold and actually get a nuclear device is, I think, higher than many expected the Israelis to tolerate even to this point.
We can read that a couple of different ways in terms of why, for example, the Israelis are holding back. Thomas Friedman, I'm sure someone that neither you or I necessarily agree with often, wrote this: the flashing signals that I just saw in Israel, no wonder Trump doesn't want to waste time with Netanyahu. He can't make any money from him, and Netanyahu won't allow Trump to make any history with him. The more I would argue to Israelis that Netanyahu is making a historic mistake, trading peace with Saudi Arabia for peace with the far-right extremists who keep him in power. The more they would ask me, do you think Trump can save us, meaning Israelis ask him, that question is the ultimate sign that your democracy is in trouble. Is this talk of striking Iran more about Benjamin Netanyahu or more about Israel?
No, it's more about Israel. I bet the actual opinion in Israel is overwhelmingly in favor of taking military action against Iran's facilities. There's no doubt this is the Israelis see this correctly as an existential threat. Yeah. Ariel Sharon, now the former prime minister, once told George W. Bush that he saw the Iranian nuclear capability as the beginning of a nuclear holocaust. And he's right. Israel's a small country, 6, 8 nuclear weapons. There is no more Israel. Israel is the only country that's ever been attacked by ballistic missiles, by Iran, twice. Fortunately, the missile defenses stopped almost all of them. But Israel can no longer be certain that the next time they see ballistic missiles being fired from Iran, that one or more of them doesn't have a nuclear warhead under the nose cone. Under those circumstances, it's a matter of life and death for the country. I think a preventive attack is entirely warranted. The U.S. should support it. In fact, if asked, we should help them. And in fact, we should volunteer to help them. It's unfair to say that the Iran nuclear program is only Israel's problem. Let's face it, it's our problem, too.
Well, as the Israelis like to point out to America, they are the little Satan, we are the big Satan. But you think about the defiance of Israel by Donald Trump. Trump likes to talk about how he is such a supporter of Israel. Agreed to a ceasefire with the Houthis that had continued to fire on Israel. Ended U.S. sanctions against Syria. Negotiated directly with Hamas on hostages, defying the Israelis. Negotiated with the Iranians. And there is a lot of people who will tell you that the planted stories, especially in the New York Times, about Israel's internal discussions over a possible strike are meant to try and box Israel in. Has something changed with Donald Trump?
Well, I've said for a long time the personal relationship between Trump and Netanyahu is not what many people think it is. It never was as close as they believed. I think Trump, in his typical transactional way, saw being pro-Israel in his first term as being beneficial politically, looking toward the 2020 election. And Trump's not going to run for a third term. I think everybody understands it now, including him. So that political guardrail, that necessity to face the voters again is gone. And I think in pursuit of the Nobel Peace Prize that he so desperately wants, couldn't get it maybe with Ukraine and Russia, take a shot at Israel, Iran. If that doesn't work, he can go for India, Pakistan. But right now, he's got Witkoff working on the Iranians. I think they're being led down the primrose path. I don't think Israel wants to attack prematurely, but they're not going to wait a second longer than they think is the ultimate they can go. I can't predict when. I would have predicted earlier, but I can't believe we're going to go through another, let's say, 60 days and not see something.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard you give a timeline like that. It should be sobering to all of us. Ambassador Bolton, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
Sir.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.